Phantom Doubleday Dell Audio Publishing presents The Magic Circle by Katherine Neville. Entering the Circle. Jerusalem, early spring AD 32. Pontius Pilate was in trouble, deep and serious trouble. He sat alone high above the city of Jerusalem on the terrace of the palace built by Herod the Great, overlooking the western wall and the Jaffa Gate. A man of surprisingly humble beginnings, Pilate had risen to join the ranks of the equestrian order in Rome, and was now a knight of the realm, but only when he had had the great fortune to be discovered by Lucius Aelius Sejanus had his star soared. These past 6 years, while the Emperor Tiberius had been in resplendent retreat, Sejanus had become the most powerful, hated, and feared man in Rome. Sejanus was free to govern as he chose, arresting his enemies on trumped-up charges, and extending control abroad by furthering his own candidates for foreign assignment, such as Pontius Pilate's appointment here in Judea. But now Sejanus was dead. He'd been executed for treason and conspiracy by order of Tiberius himself. Pilate had no delusions about his own immediate situation. He was deeply stained by his indebtedness to his late benefactor, and there were other associations linking them as well. Pilate's actions regarding the Jews, for instance, might be seen as patterned after those of Sejanus, who'd begun his own political career with purges of the Roman Jews, and had ended it by banning Jews from Rome altogether, an order recently rescinded by imperial command. Tiberius protested that he'd never wanted intolerance towards any of his subjects, that it was all Sejanus's doing. This made Pontius Pilate extremely nervous, and with excellent cause. Now a new event was on the horizon, and it was something that might save him. He had it on good advice from his spies and informers that there was a Jew who was wandering about in the wilderness, claiming, as so many of them did, to be the Enunctus, the Anointed One. This was the one the Greeks called Christos, meaning covered with oil, and whom the Jews called Messiah, which meant the same, as he understood it. Of late, the desire to see this potential king anointed seemed to have reached fever pitch, and to Pontius Pilate it was the blessing he'd been hoping for. It was the Jews themselves who would save him. It was not yet dawn when Joseph of Arimathea, bleary-eyed and exhausted from his journey, arrived at the edge of Jerusalem. In the darkness of his mind he could still hear the sounds of last night, the water lapping against the sides of the large ships, the oars dipping into water, the whispers across the surface of the moonless sea, as the small boat approached his merchant fleet that lay moored outside the port of Joppa, awaiting first light to enter the harbor. Even before Nicodemus's messenger identified himself and boarded the ship, even before Joseph saw the note he had come all this way to deliver, he felt a sense of impending doom. Even now he could see the words before him. "Make haste. The hour is come, Nicodemus." The hour had come, it said. But how could it have come? Joseph had thought in anguish. It wasn't time. Throwing caution to the winds, Joseph had roused his sleeping crew and given the command to bring his flagship to the port of Joppa. Then once in port, he'd violated Roman curfew as he headed off alone into the night. For the Sanhedrin, the Jewish council of elders, would meet at dawn, and when they did, he must be there. On the dangerous roads of the back country, in the black silence broken only by the sounds of horses' hooves on broken stone, Joseph heard the silent thought whispered over and over in the depths of his own mind. What had the Master done? As Joseph of Arimathea entered the city, the first faint haze of red was bleeding into the sky above the Mount of Olives. He left his horse to be watered and groomed, then quickly went on foot, 2 steps at a time, up the flights of stone stairs to the upper city. In the damp pre-dawn darkness around him, he noticed the stirrings of the sacred acacia trees in the early morning breeze. Arising from alcoves and archways, they seemed to permeate each pore of this labyrinthine city. Suddenly there was the regal Nicodemus standing before him. Joseph had arrived at the familiar gates of the park surrounding Nicodemus's palace. A servant was locking the gates behind him as Nicodemus threw open his arms to welcome his friend. "You've remained far too long among pagans, my friend," Nicodemus said, shaking his head. "Even your appearance is nearly blasphemy in the eyes of God." It was hard to deny, thought Joseph ruefully. With his short toga and high-laced sandals, his muscular, tanned limbs, his skin crackled and leathery from the burn of salt sea air, and his hair uncut in the prescribed fashion, he knew he must look a good deal more like a Celt than what he actually was, a distinguished and respected Judean merchant, and, like Nicodemus, an official council member of the 70, the common name for the Sanhedrin. As they started downhill, Nicodemus pointed out, "You encouraged the Master, when he was still a boy, to follow these foreign ways that can only lead to destruction. Even so, the last few weeks I've prayed for your arrival before it's too late, for perhaps only you can undo the damage that's been done this past year in your absence." It was true that Joseph had raised the young master as his own child, ever since the boy's father, a carpenter also named Joseph, had died. He'd taken him abroad on many voyages to learn the ancient wisdoms of diverse cultures. Despite this parental role, Joseph of Arimathea, having by now attained the 40 years required to sit in the Sanhedrin, was only 7 years older than his surrogate son, whom he could not help but think of as the master. "Something I could undo? I came as soon as I could, upon receiving your note," Joseph assured him. "But I assumed a political crisis, an emergency, some unforeseen incident that caused our plan to change." Nicodemus stopped on the trail and regarded Joseph with his sad, dark eyes. Joseph suddenly saw how much his friend had aged in 1 short year. He put his hands on Nicodemus's shoulders and waited gravely. "There is no political crisis," said Nicodemus, "at least not yet. But something perhaps far worse has taken place. I suppose one might call it a crisis of faith. He himself is the crisis, you see. He has changed until you'd scarcely recognize him. Even his own mother doesn't understand it. No more do his closest disciples, the 12 he calls the magic circle." "He has changed? Changed how?" said Joseph. As Nicodemus searched for words, Joseph looked down over the city, where the acacias stirred in the breeze like fingers, stroking him with rustling sighs. Beyond, in the distance, lay the majestic outcropping of the Temple of Solomon, and beneath it, the chamber of hewn stone, where the Sanhedrin would meet this morning. The temple had been conceived in a dream by Solomon's father, David, the first true king of Israel. It was the soul of the Jewish people, rising from a sea of open courtyards, its white marble pillars glowing like forests of ghost trees in the morning light. The temple shone from the valley like the sun. As this radiance filled Joseph's heart, though, he heard the voice of Nicodemus murmur in his ear, "My dear Joseph, I can think of no other way to explain it. I think we all fear it seems likely that the Master has gone completely mad." The chamber of hewn stone was reached by a spiral stairway of 33 steps carved from the ancient rock. In the days of summer its clammy chill came as a relief, but today it only added to the presentiment of doom that had already settled in Joseph's spine at Nicodemus's words. When all the members of the council had filed down the spiral stair and taken their seats, the noble Rab Gamaliel, his long hair and rich robes billowing about him, came forward to open the council meeting.
Sample complete. Ready to continue?